Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today I am building something spooky related. It is the Halloween season if you're watching this as I release it, and I have spent the past 2 weeks building a giant 20-foot by 8-foot rock. Not something Halloween related. So I wanted to kind of ease into it and maybe give you that last little thing that you need to build with your costume that is friendly to carry around and not heavy and not do any bodily damage to anybody unintentionally. So I was looking at things and ideas and thought it'd be kind of cool to make a machete. Now, a machete in and of itself is not necessarily a Halloween themed thing, but there are a lot of serial killers and Halloween movies out there that use the machete as their weapon of choice. And to me, the biggest one of all is Jason. So I am going to build a machete, take an hour or two, and then spend more time doing a custom paint job of the man himself, Jason Voorhees, on my machete. So without further ado, let's get to building. There are tons of references out there for this weapon, not to mention the fact that there are over 12 movies, video games, novels, comics, and a number of other appearances where most are slightly different than the last. So I picked a Google image that I liked and sketched it out on some poster board to make a pattern. Now you could definitely just scale up the reference image to size and print it out, but I like the challenge of doing things by hand when I can. Machetes are anywhere from 10 inches to 28 inches on the blade, so as long as I am within that range and give myself enough room to paint a portrait, I should be good. My blade ended up being about 20 inches long and the handle was another 8 inches. I'll share this template for free down in the description below the video if you'd like to give it a go yourself, and potentially this could save you a bit of time. This remaining piece of EVA foam off of my roll was not long enough to trace 2 blades onto, so I cut off a portion, glued it to the edge with contact cement, and made sure to position it where the seams would not be seen. I also staggered their placement so when I glued them up they would support each other. This is 6mm foam for the blade and 10mm foam for the handle. I make 2 copies of each with the intent of running a support wire through the middle to sturdy the flimsy, thinner foam up. You could certainly use other materials for this construction of your weapon, from cardboard to even actual metal if you wanted to, or just buy a machete from the store and paint on top of it. The foam option makes the weapon soft and safer for things like costumes and cosplay. If the game plan is to hang it on a wall, it's also a lot lighter than most of those materials too. With the pattern traced onto my materials with a Sharpie, I'm ready to cut them out with a sharp hobby knife. Make sure to be super careful while using sharp blades through foam. The material is consistent enough that you don't have a big density variation, but the bigger concern is making repetitive, uncomplicated cuts is often where people become complacent. Dropping your guard for just a second and that knife will slice through your finger like butter. Don't believe me? Ask a person who's been making for a few years. You'll see tons of scars typically all around their hands, and my bet is they can probably tell you some interesting stories behind those battle scars. A lot of mine come from not paying attention, sneezing, or tool malfunctions. Be safe and cut while alert. This EVA foam is great, but it's not dense. So instead of making my blade 30 millimeters thick, I'm gonna reinforce the foam with a wire on the inside for support. You can use fiberglass rods, flattened PVC pipe, wood dowels, or whatever other rigid thing you can get a hold of to fit in the middle of two pieces of 6mm foam. I have a local hardware store close by my house that carries this fencing wire by the roll. I've been buying it for years and not once have I ever put up a fence. It's a relatively thick gauge aluminum wire that I can easily bend into shape for the machete. Once I have the shape flattened where I want it to, I mark it out on the foam, sand out a wedge for the wire to then sit in with super glue holding it down. To close off this not so tasty machete sandwich, I am going to contact cement both sides of the blade and push them together. This will lock the wire into place and add some much needed rigidity to this floppy villain sword. If you've never used contact cement before, here are a few pointers. There are dozens of brands and all kinds of different variations of contact cement out there. You can get decent results from cheap brands you might find at a box store, but often you have to apply multiple layers of glue. Barge is a bit more expensive, but I get flawless results with just one coat. It's intended for leather, so foam doesn't really stand a chance of ripping apart. You're more likely to rip the foam than the glue seams themselves. You lay down a layer of contact cement on each surface that you want to join, wait a few minutes until the glue is no longer wet to the touch, and then smack the parts together with ample pressure. Even with perfect alignment, you're still going to have to clean up the seams of the foam. Put on a respirator, open a window, and take a rotary tool over the edges. Sanding EVA foam will kick up dust everywhere, and if you don't wear a mask, you'll be sneezing whatever color your foam is for at least a week. I didn't wear one because I'm a moron sometimes, and I felt pretty congested for a couple of days after this. You can also go ahead at this point and sand a point into the sharp edge of your machete and round over the handle so that it fits better into your hand. If you pull the sanding drum on a rotary tool slightly out, you can make some really nice faux rivets with a simple plunge of the rotary tool on the end. I push down 3 rivets on each side of the handle and then move on to adding wood grain texture to my handle. Because I chose EVA foam for this project, there's another added benefit when it comes to fine details. It is a low cost of effort for a pretty realistic dramatic effect. All you have to do is carve some little wavy lines a millimeter or 2 into the handle of your machete with a hobby knife and then hit the foam with a heat gun. The heat will cause the foam to shrink up slightly, which will open up the lines you carved. You could also paint these details on the foam later if you wanted to instead, but this way allows for a dry brushing to give a much easier, more realistic looking old split wood texture. Two coats of plasti dip, then I hit the blade with silver spray paint and the handle with brown. With our base colors primed onto the machete, I'm ready to dirty the blade up a bit. I take some basic black and brown acrylic paint and a little bit of water on my rusty chip brush and slather that slop all over the weapon. I really push it down into the crevices of the handle so that the dark color can make my carved wood grain stand out. Then I take a paper towel and wipe a majority of the high points off. To take the handle a step further, once it was dried, or partially dried, I dry brushed on some light browns to make it look more worn and sun bleached.
Perfect.
This prop can technically be done at this point, but I wanted to pay homage to the underwater breath-holding camp champ Jason Voorhees on my blade. So I printed out a couple of references, giving myself some options to combine a few elements from each. I laid down my outline with acrylic paint pens and then began filling in the colors with acrylic paint and a brush. The first stage of the painting always looks sloppy and horrible and you want to give up but just push through. As I'm wet mixing the different colors together, it gives that paint depth. I ended up painting this portrait 3 different times. The first was too dark, so I tried to lighten it up a bit and then use some blue hues to give it a little effect. I didn't like that either. So eventually I went to a lighter tone with some green glowing edge lighting, and I think that works the best. At one point I had a bloodshot nasty eyeball peeking through, but in the end decided that the hollowed out black void looked more menacing. The great thing about acrylic paint is you just keep adding layers on top of layers until you're satisfied with the mix or you run out of time.
Perfect.
I wasn't really happy with his ragged clothes, so I decided to add the Friday the 13th logo over the top of it. I pulled up the scratchy looking font on my phone and with a dark red Posca paint pen, hand drew the letters onto the blade. After I finished the letters, I went back over with a highlight of a slightly lighter red and a shadow of black to make the letters pop off the background a little more. If you're not comfortable with freehanding or painting in general, you can always just decoupage the picture directly onto your blade with Mod Podge and call it a day. I like to challenge myself and try more intricate paint jobs than just the normal base coat with sloppy washes over the top. I thought about adding some 5-minute epoxy blood effects, but ran out of time for this week due to other commitments. I did apply some silver rub and buff to the edge of the blade so it made it look like it was recently sharpened. The last little detail I wanted to add to my handle was a faux leather wrap to give the appearance of added grip. This is just a cheap strip of stretch vinyl that I painted with some black and brown to dirty it up a bit. I super glued it down and haphazardly wound it around the handle. And with that, my Voorhees Machete is complete. I hope you enjoyed this build and can see how easy it is to construct your own fake weapon out of a much safer to handle material. If you decide to make one of these, please tag me in your social media posts. I love seeing my videos put to good use. If you have some other spooky Halloween suggestions for this year's builds, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you again next week for another how-to video. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty cool. It's definitely something that's going to go well with some of the other builds that I have made. I've got a Texas Chainsaw Massacre and an It that would do great with this hanging right beside them, but Yeah. Maybe we'll try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to pull a serial killer's face from a horror film, put it on a fake weapon, and then hang it on a wall as a decoration. Yeah. Maybe you'll get some, and inevitably they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You give them one of these, tell them, much props. It's a weapon. You know it's coming. We'll go Jason's side. A 1, and a 2, and a 3.
Perfect.
If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and you want to see more builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.